Well, we're back. After a week of me being sick, we are finally back to the stream, finally back to doing what I personally absolutely love doing, which is painting awesome miniatures. So welcome everyone back. It's been an interesting week. So Saturday night, Sunday morning, I got insanely sick. And I lost my voice completely. Like, I couldn't actually talk without my voice completely breaking out and just no sound coming out until probably Thursday. So needless to say, I was on vocal rest all week until my granted not so awesome voice came back. But hey, you know what? We're here. I'm excited to be back. Thank you all for joining me. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Instead of our normal wet palette, we've got something a little bit different here in front of me. So actually, I am going to, not so sure that I'm like, half of me is like, he's probably serious. The other half of me is like, but it would probably be nice for some people. So I don't know. So this is what we're gonna be painting today. We're gonna be painting our troll that we were talking about last time. I'm gonna change some video settings here really quick because this is not looking great. I think my white balance is a little bit off. That's a little bit better. Yeah, I mean, not being able to talk for half a week was just the worst. Not to mention all the normal things from being sick, right? So, not being able to... I didn't eat for 3 days. It was bad. What doesn't look nothing? Okay, I'm gonna leave that one alone. All right, so we are going to start work on our troll today. Obviously, I've done a little bit of work already. So this is a much larger miniature. So here it is in comparison to like your normal like tabletop miniature size. So he's a big boy, and because of that, I went ahead and base coated him with my airbrush. So basically what we're going to be doing today is a little bit different than what we've normally done. So normally you see me here with a wet palette and with all my fancy brushes and things like that, but today we're going to be mostly using dry brushes and this, which is called a texture palette. So essentially what a texture palette is, it is a way that I can use dry brushes without having to get the pet overly wet in a wet palette, or wasting a lot of paper towels, essentially. So this is essentially just a textured piece of wood with some primer over it. And all we're gonna do is we're gonna take our dry brush, we're just gonna work it in until on the palette we get the texture we want, hence texture palette. So what I'm gonna start doing is I'm taking a green that is a little bit lighter than the color. I base coat it in. I'm just gonna start dry brushing the miniature all around. What this is gonna do for me is start to give me some natural highlights while leaving that darker green in the recesses. I've actually never seen He-Man, so I actually legitimately wouldn't know. So looking at the camera, you can't see it all too well, but what we're getting is some nice texture out of this. So we're getting, again, those deeper recesses are staying this nice dark green, while everything else is lightening up quite a bit. And we're just gonna keep doing this until we hit the entire miniature. And we're actually gonna be using this method quite a bit today because we're going to use the same technique to start building up some of the different transitions in colors. For instance, on his stomach is going to be a transition from this dark green to almost yellow. And so we're actually going to make that transition with my dry brush. Yeah, I mean, Mark Hamill is freaking amazing, right? There are very few people who have the kind of repertoire that he has in both acting and voice acting, right? Honestly, I can't think of anyone else who has hit the big screen with as much impact as he has with Star Wars, as well as, say, Joker, right? Which I think is Mark Hamill's probably most well-known voice acting creation. And the fact that he was able to do all of that in his lifetime is just insane, to where he can just be an amazing, phenomenal voice actor and an on-screen actor at the same time. Like, it's awesome. So I'm just gonna keep working this color with my dry brush until I get kind of the entire body to where I want. So then that's what we're really gonna call our base coat. Change some settings here just so that we're a little bit more real to life. There we go. You'll see me throughout here rubbing this on my palm or hand, just checking to make sure that I don't have too much paint on the dry brush, because if you do, instead of doing what a dry brush is supposed to do in just hitting all the, like top parts, you'll end up with this really odd streakiness on the miniature, and that is the last thing we want. Yeah, exactly. So you see all these bumps on his back. Each one of those is going to be painted as a sore. Some of these, I'll move this closer, some of these are burst and some of them haven't. So I'm going to hopefully make it look really nasty and gnarly. I'm going to be using something I haven't used on stream yet. Where are you at? Here it is. Glistening blood effect. So this is essentially a very high shine red that will give me a glistening, well, exactly like it says. It'll look like glistening blood. And we're going to use that to make it look like some of these are like popped sores, which is gross, but that's the point of this miniature. So to answer your question, absolutely, and I'm excited about it. All right, so that's going to be the first kind of dry brushing. You can kind of see at the top there where we already have a lot of that detail is popping, where you have these ridges where you have that darker and lighter paint. So we're going to start kind of working that up from that darker color to a lighter color. And to do that, we're going to use lighter green. Shocker. I know. Work that into the brush. What's going on, Liam? How you doing today? we're going to start painting in and dry brushing that lighter color where his lighter skin would be, i.e. on his chest and stomach. I'm avoiding the areas on some of his chest because some of this is hair versus skin. Like that. So this troll isn't necessarily wounded, more diseased. So they're not really going to be wounds necessarily, more of like a diseased troll. So anything that is diseased wouldn't necessarily have its normal virility. That's the wrong word. Vitality. That's the one I was looking for. Wouldn't have its, like for instance, the troll wouldn't have its normal regen properties, right? So I'm gonna use the edge of this texture palette real quick just to kind of clean off some of this paint from my brush. Got my water over here, so I'm just going to put a little bit of water just to help clean my brush off. Because we are actually going to start with a different color. So we're going to start doing a little bit of mixing here. And I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. And what I'm going to try to do is start moving his chest and stomach more and more towards a lighter and lighter color. So I do have reference photos from like Dungeons and Dragons trolls and things like that I'm referencing. Some of this is going to have to be just me creatively. Oops, don't let my keyboard disconnected. There we go. So I'm going to be referencing some of these pictures, but his stomach is going to go from like this light green to a yellowish green to almost a white. So that's what we're going for. So we're going to start off with this elven flesh, which is kind of a yellowish pink, I guess you could say. I'm going to add in a little bit more of that green that we had going on just a second ago. I'm going to switch to my smaller dry brush, and we're just going to take a little bit of that green, take a little bit of that yellow, and we're just going to mix it up, get it into the brush. There we go. And we're going to start working in from the last place we left off, leaving a little bit of that color behind, working our way into this new color. Then we're just going to slowly add more and more and more of this yellow color until we get to that pure yellow. And we're going to keep working inwards so that we're covering less and less area each time. Oh, on mine, yeah, yeah, you know what? You are absolutely right. I completely forgot about that. I blame not streaming for a week. so now we're going to go to just this pure yellowish color. If you notice, in all these transitions, I'm not actually cleaning off my brush. That's intentional because it gives me a little bit of that color left over. There's a spot here where I want to clean up the transition a little bit. All right, there. Like that. Cool, so we have that nice fade from that darker green to that lighter green, and then we'll do the same thing. I did a little bit on the inner thigh, so we'll do it there as well. Just this last color that I used. There. That's looking pretty cool. Now I'm going to go ahead and take some of the yellow that I'm going to be using, throw that down on the palette. We're going to do the same thing that we just did with the green, or with the green that we did, or with the elven flesh that we did with the green. So we're going to take a little bit of that, put it on our palette, mix a little bit of yellow in. Start working our way towards the center. And this is not going to take us as long to get to that pure yellow because there's not as much area to cover. We're basically just going to hit the center. There we go. That's looking real cool. All right, so, and last but not least, we're going to take a little bit of white, which I'm just going to dip my brush in. And just put a tint of that yellow into the white. Go. Make sure I get most of that off, and then we're just going to hit the very center of this and the very bottom. A little bit more white. There we go. All right, now there is some hair on this side, but we're going to ignore that for now. Let's go ahead and do a little bit more inside the thigh here. I'm going to do a little bit more of like a stippling motion. On this versus the actual dry brushing, so that'll give me a little bit different detail. There we go. That looks cool, I think. Cool. All right, now moving to the back. This part is the part that I'm kind of torn on because I don't really know where I want to go with the diseased bit. Go ahead and clean my brush off a little bit. So I'm just adding a little bit of water in my brush and then working it out on the wet palette, or the wet palette, the texture palette, and then just drying it off on my paper towel here. So I know what I want for each individual sore, but what I'm really curious of what I want to do is the surrounding skin. I feel like the skin in this case would be pale, but I wouldn't think it would be like getting towards white. So I'm wondering, like, probably go towards a much lighter green, obviously. So we're gonna take some of that green. I'm gonna take a little bit of this yellow, and we're gonna do just a straight yellow-green mix. We're just gonna hit this entire diseased area with that. It depends. So I had the unfortunate job of looking at reference photos. So it depends on the disease, right? So when we're talking about something that is quote unquote festering, it wouldn't necessarily, unless it was a wound, it wouldn't necessarily be purple, right? It would lean more towards pale and then red. So we're going to start with a little bit of this pale color, or paler color, I should say. We're going to start hitting it with that. And then we're going to bring in that same green. Where did that? Here it is. We're going to take some of that same green, and then we're going to start mixing it with a little bit of red. See what that gives us. So we've got Abominable Gore by Army Painter, which I love this shade of red. Honestly, it's one of my favorite shades of red. Yep, that's exactly kind of the shade I want. Kind of that. Oh yeah, absolutely, dude. That is absolutely the goal. In fact, that's the part that I think that I've gotten, that I know exactly what I want to do and how. It's just the skin around the sores that I was kind of trying to figure out. So let's go ahead and do a little bit more of that, but we'll want to add a little bit of yellow to that too. For this, we're just going to do a much lighter. We do not want as much paint on the brush for this one. A little bit on the front that I'm going to need to get. There we go. Cool. All right, let's clean off this brush real quick. So again, all I'm doing is I'm just using the corner of this to like scrape away as much paint as possible. That way when I add my water to clean off the brush, any dry paint is no longer there. That's a lovely color, isn't it? By the way, for those of you who are regulars to the stream, my work schedule, the reason I'm streaming a little bit later than normal, my work schedule has changed. So I'm actually going to be streaming starting at 9 p.m. on Mondays and Wednesdays instead of 8. Because now I get off at 9 instead of 8. So, simple reason. All right. So one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my medium dry brush here. I'm just going to knock down the brightness of this area that I stippled earlier. Just going to hit it with a little bit of that green. Just kind of blend it back in. Like that. Cool. Clean off my brush. One thing I hate about dry brushing, it's extremely effective for what it does, but because the brushes are so much bigger, there's so much more of a pain to clean. There we go. All right, so for now, that's all the dry brushing I'm gonna do. So texture palette is gonna go bye for now. And we are gonna say hello to your old wet palette. There are puddles of water on my wet palette. Gross. So despite the name, you do not want standing water on the top of your dry or wet palette. You want it to be slightly moist. There we go. Yeah, it is starting to look like Swamp Thing, and my God, I'm so sorry that your schedule is absolutely destroyed and thrown off. Whatever shall we do? So take my brush here, and let's start doing some work. Though I might need to grab some more paper towels because these are rather soaked right now. Oh, that's why you always keep a roll of paper towels close at hand. Boom. What about moldy puddles? Yes, that is actually why I keep paper towels close. That, and I'm in my office, so I also work in the same room. Oh gosh. That's gross. That is a bad stripper name, yes. But no, I also work in this room. And I also often take my lunch in this room when I work. So I keep paper towels close because I also eat in here. So, all right. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to start working in the redness of these sores. So for that, we're going to take some of that abominable gore. And we're going to take some a nice beige color, so this Pallid Witch Flesh, which I'm very fond of using. And we'll start with our red. We're going to take it and we're actually going to make a glaze out of it. We're just going to come in here to the edge of each one of these little sores, we're just gonna start glazing in some red. Except that glaze is more like paint. Need more water. That's better. So we're literally just coming into each one of these sores and we're just going to paint just right around the base of it red to kind of give it a swollen look. That would actually be really cool. The only issue with that is this print. This is a 3D print. I don't make the 3D prints. I either buy or find the files online somewhere. This just happens to be a Loot Studios model. So I don't actually have the ability. Well, I guess I could. Just not sure how, to be quite frank. Dude, this thing is gonna look nasty when I'm done. Kind of the goal, but you know. So some of these larger areas, I'm actually just going to paint red because they're like little craters, so I'm going to assume that it's like an open sore. So I'm just going to use some pure paint for that instead of the glaze. You shouldn't. Trolls are nasty. Especially in the D&D universe. I actually have a dire troll sitting over on my shelf that I painted a while back. Dire trolls are even worse. Dire trolls kill trolls and then integrate the body parts of the dead trolls into their own body. Like it's insane. So you should not feel bad for this troll at all. But yes, he is probably in a great deal of pain. I don't know if they do or not, because trolls have been known to literally rip their own heads off. So I'm not sure if trolls actually feel pain or not. At least in D&D lore, I have no idea. I would think they probably do, but in a different way than the rest of the creatures of Faerun. It's possible there are some weird creatures in the D&D universe, so that is absolutely possible. That'd be interesting lore to look up. Like, do trolls in D&D feel pain? I have the monster manual in the other room. That would be interesting I'm not sure if the monster manual would actually say if trolls feel pain or not. Yeah, I doubt it too, honestly. Just knowing some of the things that trolls do to themselves. Yes, that is not an image that I really want, to be very honest. I'll be happy to find out if trolls actually feel pain or not, but that part of it I will not be looking up. This is such relaxing music to be doing what I'm doing right now. I feel like I should be listening to like heavy metal or something. Oh, you know, just painting a disease troll and listening to like lo-fi beats I can study to. Alright. I like where that's going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start working in this beige color. As a glaze, and we're going to start at the base of most of these sores and start working our way up towards the top on some of these closed sores. Oh, that's a little bit too much pigment. That's better. So basically what I'm doing now is I'm just going to start kind of making each one of these spots look more and more pale. Some of these look a little bit intense, but because it's a glaze, it should dull down a little bit. So you just want to make it look like it's starting to pale. Sounds good, man. Do you? Yeah, OG Doom. Somehow that feels the most appropriate. Except that is definitely copyrighted music, so I would get DMC struck in a heartbeat. DMCA, whatever it's called. I will say the OG like Doom soundtrack is probably, in my opinion, mostly because I'm a metalhead, the greatest soundtrack to a video game, at least to a first-person shooter. Period. Nothing beats it. Except for maybe the new Doom soundtrack, like Doom 2016. Mostly because it was so similar to the original. Missed a spot for the red right here. I dare say that's looking a little bit diseased so far. What do y'all think? I think it looks kind of gross. Really? I guess if you, I don't know, if you consider it a horror game, then yeah, it would have been the first horror game I ever played as well. I guess it would be considered a horror game, wouldn't it? I mean, you're literally fighting demons. All right. So while all that dries, we'll go ahead and move back to the front, and we'll start in on his face. So trolls are nasty creatures. So first things first, let's go ahead and give him some nice red eyes. And then later, we will proceed to make those eyes as disgusting looking as humanly possible. Like instead of white, they'll be yellow, bloodshot, gross. I might put some pus leaking out of him. It's gonna be nasty as all get up, man. All right, so we have some red eyes. Cool. How about his theses? Well, trolls are gross creatures, so let us add okay. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that it would be considered a horror game because of like the setting. I don't know, I've never thought of it as a horror game before. Yeah. So for his teeth, I'm actually going to be using this sand color because from what I understand, trolls do not brush their teeth. So actually, the very first video game I ever played was a copy of Doom 2 on floppy disk that I found in my dad's like collection of game discs. Me and my brother had inherited a bunch of computer parts from him, and we salvaged enough like components to actually build ourselves a computer. This is an old flatboard style computer, and it wouldn't pretty much run anything, but it had a floppy drive, and so I played, first game I ever played was Doom 2 on floppy disk. I don't know if I ever told my dad that. Well, I'm simulcasting to Facebook, so if he's watching, surprise! There. I think that's a little bit gross looking. So let's start with some of his features. So I'm going to grab this color that we were using. Right, exactly. Oh man, my dad's gonna find out and be so grounded. Dude, you're 30. Doesn't matter, man. I'll take a little bit of black here just so that we can start blending them together. So I do believe my black has a clog in it. Just gonna let that sit in water for just a second. Not good. All right, cool. So in that case, take the top off. Just let whatever's in the nozzle drip out for, and that's what I'll use. Oh, really? Now it decides to unclog, and it got everywhere. Amazing. That was a big glob of black paint on my paper towel. All right. Just gonna mix these up a little bit so we can get close to my original kind of base color. I'm actually gonna switch to a slightly larger brush as well. So we're gonna go with my Game Envy Lance, which is a slightly larger brush. It's a number 2 instead of number 1. We're just gonna start bringing out some of the details on this guy's face. Very similar to what we would do if we were doing a human face. Making sure that all the raised spots get nice highlights. And we're leaving all of the standard ones. Of course you would. You love that because you know I hate pineapple on pizza because I don't like blasphemy. Pineapple on pizza does not deserve to live. There, I said it. That is an unfortunate lie that has been told to you by Big Pineapple. Pineapple on pizza isn't actually good. People just pretend that it's good. And I stand by that. Yeah, Big Pineapple wouldn't lie, along with Big Tech, Big Pharma. Stop being a sheeple. Stop eating pineapple pizza, man. Do you realize what's in pineapple? What are you putting in your body? It's all just chemicals. It's not natural to put pineapple on pizza. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. No, I do like good food, which is why I hate pineapple on pizza. So once again, right now, all I'm doing is just hitting all these little details on his face. Making sure that I'm accentuating things that I want to be seen. And putting highlights where light would naturally shine. I've never had pineapple ice cream, to be honest. So I'm not really an expert on that. But here's the thing. The reason why pineapple on pizza is stupid, all right, hot take, is because it's this idea that sweet and savory go together. And yeah, in certain circumstances they do. But if I'm trying to eat a pizza, I'm not trying to get something sweet until afterwards. Right? So like, if I want something sweet, I'll get pineapple, or I'll get a pizza and then like ice cream afterwards. I don't want the sweet to be on the pizza. I want the pizza to be savory. My ideal pizza is something like Supreme, where you have like onions and or a sausage, pepperoni, cheese, olives, peppers, or just cheese. Like I'm kind of like a no in betweener thing. Like if I had to choose what pizza I'm going to be eating, it's either going to be Supreme or cheese and nothing in between. It's either got to be dead simple or like everything but pineapple. Yeah, I don't like fishy stuff either, so no like anchovies or anything like that. Oh no. My arm was sitting on my brush and it made it bend. I can fix that later. All right. Pineapple, jalapenos, ham, and mushrooms. I'm not gonna lie, that sounds like the weirdest combination I've ever heard. I think you're the first person I've ever met that has given me that combination. I've never heard of like putting jalapenos on a pizza with, or essentially jalapenos on a Hawaiian pizza. I'm sure there's other people that do it, and it's probably not that weird. Just I've never heard of anybody doing it or seen anybody do it. Okay, so the back is probably nice and dry. And so one thing that I'm noticing is the white that I use a little bit too vibrant. So I'm going to add a little bit of that tan to the mix to start bringing it down. I'm just going to start glazing over these areas with more of a tan than a white, because eventually I'm going to want to blend this in to the skin around it. I don't know. Now I think about it, I think it looks a little bit more stark to have these like bright white spots on them. Kind of adds to this idea that it's definitely a disease and not something that's completely natural. I was never a huge fan of Greek pizza. My mom really liked it, but I was never a huge fan. But then again, I'm like insanely picky when it comes to like pizza. Probably, I'm not insanely picky when it comes to food in general, but definitely to pizza. We got like a hair or something on this. Got it. It's looking a little bit better. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some red, a little bit of that yellow glaze color, start mixing up a kind of a fleshy pink. And we're going to start glazing that on the very tops of each one of these. If you're hungry, go get some to eat. See, that's a little bit much. Should probably not give yourself internal bleeding from eating spicy food. It's probably not a healthy idea. Okay. So now this is where this blood effect is going to come in. So now that I've gotten some of these wounds laid down, I'm going to take this glistening blood effect and I'm going to start painting it onto these open wounds, which is going to give it, well, a glistening blood effect. It's going to make it look shiny and gross, and it's going to be amazing. this paint is slightly transparent, so we should get a little bit of that red that we've already put down coming through. Yeah, that looks nice and gross. Yeah, he does look really hurt. But no, they're not like mold cultures. They're supposed to be like blistering sores, which I'm not done just yet. Wait, there are frogs that give birth through the skin on their back? That can't be real. It's gross if it is real. Huh. Interesting. All right, so I think those open sores are looking absolutely gruesome, dude. That looks super cool. But let's go ahead. I'm going to take a really, really light green glaze, like almost no pigment, mostly water. And I'm just going to start glazing the bottom of this white to try to bring out more of the green. Actually, before I do that, because I mixed the green with the red to get these colors, so we'll use that instead. A kind of puke color that we got earlier. Cool. And we're just going to start, again, trying to blend some of the color back into this so that it's not so white. At the bottom. If you think about like sores that you would find on your own body, which is gross to think about, but it's not just a white bump, right? It's usually a bump that is your skin color until it gets to the very top where it changes to white, and then usually will have like a little red cap. And that's what I'm kind of trying to convey with this. So the file, the file was just called Festering Troll, so it doesn't have a name given to it by the company. But for whatever reason, the first name that popped in my mind was Sylvester, so we're gonna call this dude Sylvester. Sylvester the Festering Troll. He's always after something, that's for sure. Probably just his next meal. There, I think that looks a lot more convincing, a lot more like a sore than kind of like what Liam was saying, where it almost looked like a mold culture. Nice. So, evidently I named my Festering Troll after Liam's Liam's healer. Alright, so now comes to the part that I am super uncomfortable with. Gotta start trying to get the color of pus. So we're gonna start with yellow. And we're gonna add a little bit of bone white, and we're just gonna mix this together until we get something that resembles that oh so disgusting yellow fluid that leaks out of sores. There we go. Well, that's what I kind of did right here. So I made like a mustard color mixed with a little bit of green, and that's what we're gonna go with. And we're just going to slowly make it drip down his back from these sores. Like so. I do believe that is sufficiently gross. And we're just gonna do this with literally all the sores. That's disgusting. I understand, like, some people find that like super satisfying. I just find it gross. I don't get how people can watch those. Like, I am like grossed out by my own work here because I don't like the sight of like pus and like gross. Yeah, he probably smells like the absolute like worst of everything. For all of y'all watching that thinks this is gross, you can thank Dirk for this. He's the one that asked to do the festering troll. Cool. Oh, no, one more. Missed one. Well, that was kind of the effect I was going for anyway. I'm not exactly sure what to do more to make it look like that, to be honest. One thing I will do is I'm going to add a little bit of this blood effect into some of these to make it look like the pus is mixing with blood a little bit. Yeah, that looks gross. Yeah, I'm super happy with it. Definitely looks diseased, that's for sure. All right, let's start working on some of the other details for now. We'll come back to that. So I just have to figure out what color I'm going to do as loincloth. I was thinking of just doing the normal, like standard color that I do for cloth. But I'm not exactly sure. So while I still mull that over, I'm going to color some of the hair that he's got on like his hands and feet. Which of course, because he's a troll, we're going with black hair. Yeah, that's kind of like, so normally what I do is I go for like a brown tannish kind of color, kind of go for like a canvas look. That's what I normally do. I think it would fit, but again, it's like my standard go-to color. But I guess if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? This actually seems like it's going to end up being taking a lot less time than I originally thought I was going to. Mostly because this is such a large model, but most of these details I was able to dry brush on versus hand paintings. Well, technically it's all hand painting, but you know. I just realized I'm not as chatty as I normally am I? I'm just kind of painting. Super relaxing, to be honest. Mostly, I think I'm not talking as much as I normally do because I have absolutely no clue what I'm doing when it comes to this model. Because I haven't really done like a diseased effect yet, and so the fact that I am now, it's kind of like, well, I hope it turns out right. Which I think it's turning out fine, so. We are going to need to do a little bit more dry brushing on this guy, especially for the hair, because the hair is so textured that just painting it black really isn't going to do. So we're going to dry brush a little bit of dark gray on it just to give it a little bit of highlight. There we go. This guy is hopefully going to look super gross once I'm done. One of the few times I actually hope that when people see a model I make, they go like, bro, that's disgusting. But I think that will turn a few stomachs, hopefully. Probably be using a larger brush for this, but I kind of want to be more precise even though I'm covering a larger area. And it might help if I do so on this. I have no idea. The better question is, why are you looking at pictures of loincloths? I feel like everything I did with this hair, at least the hair on his head for the past like 5 minutes, was out of frame. It's just classic. Ah, gotcha. Yeah, I think most of them are going to be kind of that like old canvas color, kind of like a beige, like a dirty beige or something like that. Interesting. Yeah, green definitely wouldn't be good for this particular one, mostly because we already have a lot of green going on. So I'm going to bring back my texture palette here so we can throw some black on it. Or not black, I want gray. We want my small brush. And we're just going to start dry brushing this dark gray onto this guy's hair to give it a little bit more dynamic. I don't really mind if I get some on the arm or on the skin, because that's just going to help blend the hair in and make it look a little bit more natural. Instead of being really stark like it is now. There we go. And now for the chest. There we go. I'm going to put a little bit of, actually this white might, nope, that white is dry. Bone dry. Let's grab a little bit of white from my doohickey here. We're just going to start mixing in some gray until we get slightly lighter gray, but still fairly dark. Because we don't want we want the hair to read black. If we add too light of a gray, it'll read gray instead of black with highlights. Just kind of the challenge of painting black. White too, but not as, it's not as bad as black is. The challenge with white is getting the shade correct. Highlights are just going to be pure white. There. That looks good. I think the biggest challenge that this model is going to present is going to be this base, because it's so big and there's so much really cool detail. Try off my dry brush here. Cool. All right. Say goodbye to texture palette and back to Mr. Wet Palette. Let's take some of this black and we're going to do some fingernail painting and toenail painting. Just making sure that these are not a nice jet black. Get a little bit of water in there. Oh, of the texture palette? Yeah, it does kind of look like that. At least right now. One of the cool things that I've seen with texture palettes is like every time you use it, it changes and it looks different. And it's like almost like a work of art in and of itself that is just like incidental. All right, and then he has these little like back claws like a dog or a cat would have. So we're just gonna paint those real quick. Cool. And the second one. All right, and let's do the claws, which are going to be kind of difficult because his hand is all balled up. That's one of the things that kind of annoys me about the way that certain like STL files are made. Like it makes sense for printing and the sculpts look amazing, but it wasn't necessarily made with painting in mind because some of these areas are just the worst trying to get to. But those are the times where you really learn brush control. Trying to get into hard to reach places without getting paint all over everything else. Do you know what? I think I figured out what I want to do. What I want to do with his loincloth. What if we did it like canvas, but did like dried blood stains on it? I think that would look kind of cool. Sweet. I mean, whatever I do, it's not exactly a huge commitment to do it, right? Because I can change it and do whatever I want, but still. I don't like doing that. That's not fun. Doing your work more than once is never fun. So I'm going to grab my small brush again, and we are going to attempt to paint the inside of this thing's mouth, which is going to be a challenge. Because the entrance to his mouth is actually rather small. Again, this goes back to this idea that this is an amazing sculpt, but there are certain parts of this that weren't exactly made with painting in mind. Wait, what does? Painting it with like blood stains? I was thinking more like he killed somebody, but okay. We can go with UTI as well. Alright, let's get a size 3 brush out and start with the loincloth. I'm going to start with some Xandri dust. And we're gonna go for just like your standard kind of dirtied canvas look. And I think even though that's what I normally do, I think adding those blood stains will make it different enough from what I normally do to be interesting. You know what, let me get a larger brush. Because I'm going to be here all night otherwise. I mean, I'm going to be here all night anyway. But might as well actually make it efficient. Get a big old honkin' size 6 brush versus the size 3 that I was using. Again, might help if I keep this in frame. Again, I take solace in knowing the fact that there's a lot of like professional streamers who do painting that can't keep it in frame either. So I take solace in the fact that I'm not alone. Oh no. There we go. Really try not to get any on the actual body of the troll, because now that I'm doing this after all my dry brushing, it's gonna be a lot harder to fix mistakes. So my brush control is really gonna have to be on point as I do this loincloth. Dude, this loincloth is going to take a lot more time than I thought. I find it funny, so what I thought was going to take a lot of time took absolutely no time at all thanks to dry brushing. This loincloth is actually going to take a lot of time and detail to actually paint. That's what I call irony. There we go. Now we have to do the inside and like the front and the back inside. It's not really going to do anything super detail when I'm doing like the inside of a cloth like this, or like the inside of a cape. But you always want to make sure that you have nothing unpainted. At least I like to make sure I have nothing unpainted on a miniature. Mostly because I'm anal about that. May not look good because nobody's ever going to see it, but I'm going to make sure that's at least done. Whew, man, this one is a lot harder to get to. Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to get to all of it. That's okay. The point isn't to get everything done like that. Just checking my stream here. Cool. How long have we been going? We've been going for about 2 hours, so we'll go for another hour or so before ending the stream. I think that'll be a good time. Also, it's interesting, ever since I started streaming and really tracking the time that I've been doing miniatures, it has really made me realize how much time I am actually putting into my painting. Whereas before, you know, I was kind of like, oh, maybe I spend an hour, maybe 2 on a miniature, not really realizing that I'm spending 6, 7, 8, 9 hours painting. I just never realized it because I just don't keep track of time whenever I'm painting. Just kind of get in the zone and kind of get into a place of zen, I guess you could say. All right, so we'll let that dry and we'll move on to the eyeballs. So the eyeballs, like I mentioned earlier, aren't going to stay red. I really want them to look gross and diseased and disgusting. So for that, I'm going to use some of this older paint. This is actually some of the paint I started with. So Blast from the Past, this like D&D starter set paint from Army Painters. I got a kit of this that came with like a bunch of colors and a miniature, and that's what I started with. And I still actually use some of those colors today, just every so often. So we're gonna get a nice like sick yellow color, and we are gonna go in and paint just the inside of the eyeball, leaving some of that red around the perimeter. And the key that I found with painting eyes is instead of trying to paint the whole thing in one stroke, you're really taking like 15 to 20 really short paint strokes versus a couple really long ones. And that just helps with accuracy. And control. There we go. Got a couple eyeballs there. But I think I want to bring that area a little bit further towards the center in this eye. So we're going to take my brush back. Just paint a little bit further towards the nose. Yep, exactly like that. Okay, and the loincloth isn't completely dry yet, so we'll go ahead, move on to the iris. So the iris, what color do I want this iris to be? Yellow's not really going to stand out enough when compared to the color that I just used. Green isn't really going to stand out. What I could do is I could just, instead of painting like a normal iris, is almost paint it like cat eyes, to where it's that like angular. What is the paint zone? Oh, you're talking about, oh, got it. I was like, What's she talking about? It's like, oh yeah, I literally just talked about that 2 seconds ago. I'm looking at different pictures of trolls online. And actually, a lot of them just have like this bright yellow center. So what I'll do in that case is I'll take some of this yellow here. And we'll do the exact same thing that I did with this other mixture. We're just going to paint the inside of it kind of like we did with the white yellow. Just to give it a little bit more of a yellowish hue. But still leaving some of that white on the outside. And then we'll go in for the iris, or the pupil, which is the most difficult part of any eye. Because if you don't get it right, it looks less like an eye and more like he's like looking off into 16 different directions. Boom. I like that a lot. And now we're gonna do something fancy. Y'all want to do something fancy? I think I want to do something fancy. So there is, where is it at? Here you go, polish bone. You know what? Let's go white. Let's just go pure white. So if you look at an eye, like a picture of an eye, there's usually some sort of reflection of a light source. It's called a specular highlight. So I'm just going to take a little bit of pure white just on the tip of my brush, and I'm just going to put the smallest little dot of white somewhere on the eye. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side in the same place. Usually you put that somewhere on the pupil so it kind of makes it look like the pupil is glistening. Which it doesn't really show up that well because of the colors I've used, but it's there and we know it's there and it looks cool. All right. All right, this guy looks like he has life in his eyes now, which is kind of scary. Life in his eyes and disease on his back. All right, so let's go ahead and finish up this loincloth because it looks like it's about dry now. So I'm going to grab my next color, which is this Ushitabi Bone by Citadel. I'm going to add a couple drops to our old paint pile from the last color. Where did that brush go? There, right in front of me. We're gonna mix that up. And we're gonna start highlighting the cloth. Pretty much only gonna leave this base coat in the absolute darkest recesses. Everything else is gonna get this highlight color. And we are just going to do this with all of these different folds that are on this cloth here. Being very careful to keep my brush away from the leg, because I really don't want this color to hit anywhere that I've already painted on the body of the creature. Again, just making sure that this gets everywhere except the deepest recesses, because that's where we're going to keep our shadow. And that's what's going to give us a really cool dynamic looking loincloth. Especially in this situation, we want to make sure that we hit all of the peaks at the very least. Like on this part of the cloth where there's a lot of folds, using the side of my brush versus the tip of the brush to make sure that all of these little peaks are highlighted. And the same for the other side. There are some spots here where I do want to add a little bit more of a highlight, right to the edge of this cloth here. Cool. Now we move to the back. Now this brush is actually a synthetic brush that I got from Monument Hobbies. One of the things I really like about this, other than its size, of course, is it's got a lot of the springiness that I like in a brush, but it also holds its point really well, which is not something that I often get with synthetic brushes, at least the ones that I've tried. So if you're looking for a good starter brush set, they're never in stock, so that's a problem. But if you can get your hands on a set of Monument Pro synthetic brushes, they're pretty affordable, and they, at least this larger one that I own, performs really, really well. Let's add a little bit of water to this. interesting thing about the back of this loincloth, there are still a lot of folds like there were on the front. A lot of these folds are a lot more shallow. So I'm kind of having to, we talked the other day about creating your own lines whenever the, you know, like miniature painting is all about just coloring inside the lines, but sometimes you have to create your own lines. So in this case, I'm kind of having to judge where the folds are and the points where the light would hit the most, and painting around that instead of like on the front where we actually had physical folds that kind of helped guide where we're going to put our highlights. And what I'll do is, unlike the other side where I really didn't care about the transitions because the transitions were so stark, I'm going to go ahead and add a glaze to some of this. Oof. To help kind of smooth out these transitions between these more stark contrast areas. Because we still want that highlight, but we don't want it to look like it's just like boom, dark spot, you know. We want it to make it look like the transition is intentional. And we want to make sure it looks good, most importantly. Cool. And then on the front, kind of using my camera too, because my camera is a little bit more contrasty than what it looks like. So looking up, it's kind of guiding where I'm putting this glaze and helping me out. All right, so that's looking pretty decent. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some more of that pallid witch flesh that I love so dearly. I'm going to add a couple drops into our pile here to kind of lighten that color up and put in our next highlight. And then eventually what I want to do is I want the absolute peaks of these highlights to be pure pallid witch flesh. But this we're just going to paint just all the way up to the shadow, but we're not going to go as far over. Yeah, I kind of need some coffee too. But I would like to get to sleep at some point tonight, so coffee will be for the morning for me. There we go. So just gonna start working up these highlights. Oh yeah, I keep forgetting about that. So that's actually not Discord, that's Facebook. I keep forgetting that y'all can actually hear everything that's coming through my desktop. since I was streaming to Facebook, I had Facebook open. That's why I was, and so I have somebody messaging our Facebook group that I'm in. It didn't used to for me for a while, but it has recently. It's kind of weird. All right, and then whenever we're painting some of these more complex shapes, we just got to keep in mind that nothing can be an island. Or I should say nothing should be an island. It can very easily be an island, but just try to make sure that whatever you do, that especially with cloth and skin, not so much for things like metal, because that's going to interact with light a little bit differently, but that everything is connected, so that it doesn't look like one piece of cloth is like out there on its own, all shiny, and everything else around it isn't, because that's just not how light works. At least I've been told. I'm not a light scientist. Nice. All right, so I'm going to pick some of this up, create a glaze out of it. And I'm just going to smooth this transition out a little bit. Like that. Better. All right, so now my final transition is going to be to this pure pallid witch flesh, and for this I'm gonna switch to a smaller brush, and I really need to be careful because I really only want this on the absolute peaks of all of these different folds. So I'm gonna take my witch flesh, take my slightly smaller brush, and let's go to work. We're basically edge highlighting with this, so we're just going around all the edges and all of the peaks, and that's pretty much going to be it for this color. basically what this is going to do is really make all these edges pop, kind of cause a separation between the folds and the rest of the cloth, and just make it look a little bit cooler. And again, not everything we do in miniature painting is lifelike, right? So not every edge of a piece of cloth is going to be bright, right? But again, we don't necessarily paint things to look real. Paint things to look good. Just gonna hit some of these peaks here. Being very, very careful to make sure that we're not doing any more than we need to. Cool. I think that looks good. So now, there's a little bit of detail here that we're gonna have to deal with, which is a thread. So I'm gonna take some earthy brown colors. And I'm gonna take our small brush and we're gonna start painting all these individual stitches. You know what? I'm gonna use a different shade of brown. Mostly because this brown is struggles with coverage. So I'm gonna use one that's a little bit thicker. Just so that we get a better coverage on what we're doing. And we're just going to go through, and each one of these little stitches is just going to get a little bit of brown. And then after this, after all these stitches get painted, I'm going to go back with a wash and I'm going to recess shade these little seams that these stitches are holding together. There we go. Just gonna make all of those really cool stitching effects stand out a little bit more. Some details like that, that's really gonna make your miniature stand out. Because even though that it's kind of subtle, it's details like that that your eye doesn't really notice, but it makes someone be like, oh wow. It's kind of the way I describe recess shading as well. It's one of those things that just pulls a miniature together and gives it that extra pop. People may not know exactly what a recessed shade is or how it's done or even notice that it's there, but it gives it that one little extra boost of detail. Okay, there's one more seam and then all these stitches are done. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to grab some wash and do a recess shade. So as normal, I'm going to be using Nuln Oil by Citadel. I'm going to take one of my smaller brushes here. And basically all we're going to do is we're going to guide the shade or the wash into these small recesses. And all we're doing is just adding it into this little line in between all these stitches, just to bring out that extra little bit of detail. There. So again, it just makes it pop just that much more. And we'll do the same on the front and sides. almost there. There you go. That is stitching. I'm gonna call that loincloth finished. So I think we'll leave the base for next time. I'm gonna go ahead and, as always, post pictures in a little bit better resolution than on the stream in my Discord and in the TOI Discord so that everybody can see our progress from today. I'm gonna go ahead and call it at 2 hours and 45 minutes. I think we did a lot and we went a long way with our festering troll here. We'll do the base. The base has some really cool detail. We might finish it on Wednesday, and if we do finish it, probably what I'll end up doing is pulling in some Space Marines and just kind of going through and just showing you what I normally would do when doing models that I'm doing 4, 5, 6 at a time, and they're all the same, and then that kind of process. So, but as always, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for coming and watching me paint a disgusting, gross, diseased troll. Yeah, until we meet again, see you later. Until we meet again, see you later. Until we meet again, see you later. Yeah, until we meet again, see you later. Until we meet again, see you later.